I see you, Solitaire Wisdom. Girl, you ain't even let me get on the joint good. Shit. All right. Okay. All right. So, um, I need to do something. I didn't think about trying to figure this out until just now. Let me try to figure this out really quick. Greetings, everybody. I'm trying to see how I can open this document that I need to read from. Let me do it like that. Okay. Awesome. And then I think, you know what? I might just... Yeah. Nah, I'll just do it like this. All right. Okay. All right. I'm done fumbling around. So let's see. All right. Perfect. Awesome. And done. All right. Okay, everyone. My name is Cassandra Floyd, also known as the Daughter of the Fates, founder of the Temple of Evolutionary Emergence. And I'm telling you, this that I'm doing was highly ambitious. 3 lives in a single day is some ambitious shit. Okay? Especially since I have this event that I'm hosting tomorrow. But I'm going to try to persevere. Okay? So, for those of you tuning in, if you received the notifications, you may have seen earlier today, I placed some notifications for some lives I'm going to do. I read today from Parable of the Sower. So now I am going to start. Let me close my door because fucking LA helicopters are circling overhead and it's like drowning me out. Give me a second. And it just started. All right, so we have a lot of ground to cover today. So as I stated earlier, I hope you have a notebook, pen, paper, because we have a lot to cover. And I'm going to try to keep this concise. This topic, I'm teaching this topic all the time. All the time. It's my soapbox and my estimation. It can change so much for people if they just knew not even the deep, like, you ain't got to go to medical school, just the base, just the foundation of 5 elements theory can really change your life, can really give you, can empower you, can really give you the language and the tools necessary to show up for yourself, to show up for your family and friends, those people that are closest to you in your circle. And it's one of those things that is so, it's so tapped in to how people learn best. And what I mean by that is, they did these studies, a few years ago where they talked about, why children of color are having such a difficult time in public school. And they come to understand that the kids are what they call circular learners. They're not just auditory learners. They can't just hear a teacher mouthing shit for 8 hours, or they can't, see somebody just writing stuff on the board. They need all the things. They need the auditory, the visual, and the tactile, right? And so learning just the foundation of 5 elements theory can really, really demystify your own walk in health and wellness. Okay. So that's my short little overview, because it can get deep, but it's also very easy to understand. It's kind of a paradox. It can get very deep, but it is also very, very so easy to understand because it covers all those grounds, right? Okay, so what I'm going to do, as mentioned above, let me extend this intro. In the description, I talk about the significance of why I am starting with the wood element for this discussion on five elements theory. The reason is because my intention all week this week was to do a live to give you guys some ideas about detoxes that you could do this month as we're entering into the spring. March 19th is our transition into the spring season. It's the equinox on March 19th. Every March, I do a personal detox for the entire month of March to prepare myself for entry into the spring season. This detox that I do, while it is spiritual, it also has dual function. It functions to as my liver detox as we enter into the liver season. Okay, so I was like, I should just kill two birds with one stone. Y'all been kicking my ass in my emails about doing five elements, little lives and shit. So I was like, all right, this is an opportune time to do that. So I'm going to start with the wood element in five elements. And at the end of this, I'm going to try to keep this to an hour. At the end of this, I will give you those ideas that you can incorporate and tailor to use as a detox for this month, right? Now, for me, I started my detox on the first day of this month, okay? It doesn't have to be that long. It can be 3 days. It can be a week. It can be the week before the equinox. It can be the week after the equinox. I am just going to give you some pointers. You incorporate them and tailor them to your pleasure, okay? We're going to start with the theory. So we should start with something that you guys have heard me talk about quite a bit over the years, over the last at least 3 years. I might. I don't know if I have enough room. But the context with which you have heard me talk about this particular thing that I am about to talk to you about is highly spiritual and highly political. But today we are going to talk solely about its functionality within the context of traditional Chinese medicine in general, and in particular, the school of thought known as five elements theory. Okay, maybe, yeah, that should work. Okay. I just had to make sure I had enough room for you to actually see the, Okay, so we should start with the first picture. Wow, this is so synchronous. I started an Olokun ritual fasting and detox for Pisces season, began on March 1st. Right on. Love that. Okay. So the first thing I'm going to show you, I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time on it, but you need to see this first before we start talking about five elements, okay? So this is the very popular symbol that I'm always going ham on politically, right? The infamous Yin-yang symbol, okay? Right? So this symbol, we always obviously see it as a two-dimensional symbol, right? Flat, written out, whatever. The symbol in its nature is actually a five-dimensional symbol, okay? I ain't gonna get that deep on you with it, but you should know that if you were able to see it, it would be constantly moving. It would be constantly ebbing and flowing with the white and the black constantly like waving in and out of each other, right? Mutually consuming, mutually compatible. One can't exist without the other, the whole thing, right? So the white is a representation of yang energy, Okay. And so to get an idea of like the nature or quality of yang energy, you've got the sun, light, warmth, heat, aggressive. What does that say? Independent, fire, testosterone, right? Ether. That's yang energy. Okay. And then the yin energy, represented by the negative sign here, is like moon, earth, mother, water, passive, dark, nurturing, flesh, blood, soil, trees, right? And up and down should be in this too, right? Because your body, just like everything in the universe, is a bunch of what's the word I'm looking for? The lower part of your body, from the navel down, is considered yin. From the belly button up is considered yang. The further up your body you go, the more yang you are, right? Okay, so up down should be up in there, among a bunch of other stuff. You should know that, because once I show you the 5 elements star, okay, you should know that yin and yang both are represented at each one of the 5 elements. Both yin and yang are represented at each element. Okay, so we're gonna go ahead and move. Like I said, I want to try to be disciplined and finish this in an hour. It's ambitious, but we're gonna try. So this is the 5 elements star. Okay, this is the 5 elements star. Oh, you know what? I should write something down before I forget. What I am writing down is, because I usually just kind of like make a side note about it, but increasingly I am thinking I need to create both. So this is the most popular representation of the 5 elements. However, there is in Chinese medicine another, and I am finding increasingly important personification of the 5 elements, especially since I'm out here on the West Coast, you feel me? Especially as more and more people are getting into like, ancestral tradition, witchcraft, stuff like that. I am finding, even in session with people, that I need to place just as much focus on the second personification or representation of the 5 elements. So I'm just going to chicken scratch that really quick, so at least you have a frame of reference. The second personification or representation of the 5 elements is based on the cardinal directions. Okay, so in this representation, you have, I'm just going to write, let's find us here. That's metal, water, and wood. Okay, so, and I'll do a better drawing of this for the next one that we do, but for today I'll just show it to you briefly so you still have a frame of reference for both. Okay, all right, so here okay, all right. So here you have in the center, you have the earth placed in the center in this personification or this representation. This is called the cardinal directions representation of the 5 elements. So in this one, the earth is in the center. So it gives you an idea of the importance of the earth in terms of its relationship with the other elements. You have fire at the north, you have metal at the east, you have water at the south, and you have wood at the west in this personification. You can just jot that down really quick. And the next one that we do, I will have a better representation of this drawn out for you. Okay. All right. So, all right. So back to the more popular representation. So the reason that it was important to start with the yin-yang graph or the yin-yang picture is because this is considered harmonious. All the sides are relatively equal. The distribution of energy, which is represented by these arrows, the distribution of energy and influence is relatively even. It looks like it's moving smoothly around, which is the generating cycle, and within, which is the controlling cycle. Okay, we won't get that deep, though it is something you will need to know later. Okay, for right now, we're talking about the harmonious relationship that is depicted in this symbol right here. That harmony being indicative of the yin yang. That when all is harmonious, this is what you would have. Okay? How is harmony established within the context of the 5 elements chart? So in each chart, which I have color coded, you have the north point of the star, which is the fire element. You have the west, I'll just go in direction of the generating cycle. So from the fire element, you have the earth element on the east. On the southeast, you have the metal element. On the southwest, you have the water element. And on the west, you have the wood element. Okay? And the reason it was important, I might have to put this down every now and again because I trashed my shoulder last week. So I'm still kind of suffering from that. But so the reason I went in that direction is because you see these arrows going around the perimeter of the circle. So you can write down, if you're taking notes, you can write down outside circle or outside arrow. The outside arrows are called the generating cycle. It's important to know. I'll tell you why later, but it is the generating cycle. The generating cycle in some schools of thought are called also, you can put in parentheses, the mothering cycle or the birthing cycle. The mothering cycle or the birthing cycle, this depending upon the school of thought you're approaching. That too is important because for some people it helps them to understand like the relationship between the elements. So just very quickly, if you're starting at the top, the fire gives birth to earth or generates earth. Earth generates metal. If you're going around the circle, earth generates metal. Metal generates water. Water generates wood. And wood generates fire. Okay? On the inside of this circle, the arrows going, like, for example, from the water element up to the fire element, those inside along the border of the star, those inside arrows are called the controlling cycle. The controlling cycle. So starting, say, from the water element, water controls fire. Fire controls metal. Metal controls wood. And wood controls earth. And lastly, earth controls water. Okay? Now I'm going to slow down for a second. When you're talking about the controlling cycle, when you're talking about the birthing cycle or the generating cycle, what you're thinking about is the relationship of these elements in the real world. You know, the idea that the ancients had when coming up with this theory is that the earth used to be what? A ball of molten rock. And then that fire produced earth over millions of years, right? That's this circle, that's this arrow here. How fire generates earth. Earth here generates or mothers metal. That too makes perfect sense. All the metal in the world comes out of the belly of the earth. Metal generates water. Now, the metal that they're talking about here is the mineral content of water. It is the mineral content in water, right? Water mothers or generates wood. Wood won't grow, won't be strong without water. And wood generates fire. You want to make the fire bigger, you put more wood on the fire to grow the fire. Okay? The controlling cycle, same thing, makes perfect sense. When we say water controls fire, that it makes perfect sense without even having to explain it, right? Fire controls metal. Can't use metal without heat. You can't shape it, can't crack, can't do nothing with metal until it's heated and then shaped from there. So fire controls metal. Metal controls wood. Self-explanatory. A tree is just a tree, at least you know. Without getting too political, a tree is just a tree until metal is used in some way to shape it and transform it into something else. Okay? And then wood controls earth. Those of us who live in California know this well because the mountains in California have been so deforested every time, which the root systems are what hold the earth stable, hold the earth together. When you deforest an area, one of the primary issues that you have is mudslides. So wood controls earth, and then earth controls water. So you think about the earth that is along a river. It is the river flows based on the earth's direction. So the earth guides the river, if you will. So earth controls water. Okay. Okay. Now the elements are there to help you understand that what is happening outside your body is happening inside your body. This is the metaphor or analysis or an analogy that helps you to understand what is happening in your body. So when you start to apply this, when you start to pay attention to the colors, right? When you start learning about the other attributes of these elements, now you can start to self-assess. Now you can start to self-assess. When you start to see symptoms that present with a certain color or a certain taste or a certain smell, now you can partner those with these organs in their presentation. You can say, oh, you know, whatever. We'll get into that deeper. Okay. So that's just the structure, the basic structure of the 5 elements. Now let's talk about each element really quickly. And then we're going to shift gears to where we're only talking about the wood element. Okay. In the north, you have the fire element. And remember, I was telling you the yin and yang. So each element has both a yin and yang aspect. That yin and yang aspect are the organs. The yin organs are considered your internal or inside organs. Your internal or your inside organs. They're your major organs. Okay? Their yang partner are all the organs that are considered outside the body. So in Western medicine now, we know, in basic biology, we learn now that everything from the mouth to the anus is considered outside the body. That food and drinks do not become a part of self until they cross the boundary in the small and large intestines, where your nutrients are extracted from that which you cannot use, and the rest goes out as feces or as urine. Okay, so everything from the mouth to the anus is considered outside the body. That's why these yang partner organs are considered yang. is because they are all a part of that process, or those organs that participate in the digestive process from the mouth to the anus. Okay, so in the fire element, you have the heart as the yin organ. Its yang partner is the small intestines. I have it, abbreviated as just, heart, HT, and SI as small intestines. But the yin and yang organ of the fire element is the heart and the small intestines. Now, I'm going to tell you, I don't want to get, because I don't really think it's really necessary for you to have a rudimentary understanding of the 5 elements, but the fire element is the only element that actually has 4 organs represented. The second set, the yin organ, is the pericardium. And the pericardium is the sac that protects the heart. It's that little sac that is around the heart that protects the heart. And its yang partner is an idea or theoretical organ called the sanjiao, or the triple burner. For the sake of this discussion, I don't necessarily think you're going to need to know that, but you should know that if you look in the links that I've attached to this little mini workshop, you'll see links, and those links will always have pictured 4 organs that take up the space and as the fire element. It's the heart and its protector, the pericardium, and the sanjiao and the small intestine. Okay, just so you aren't confused when you see these pictures. Then you have the earth element, which is represented. The yin organ is the spleen, and its yang partner is the stomach. For the metal element, it's the lung, and the yang partner is the large intestines. For the water element, you have the kidney as the yin organ, and the urinary bladder as the yang partner. And lastly, you have, for the wood element, the liver as the yin organ, and the gallbladder as its yang partner. I'm going to put this down for a minute, just so I can rest my arm, and continue to talk to you. And I'll prick this back up in a second. So that is a very quick introduction to the 5 elements. Those 5 elements we will be discussing over a period of time. So what I have said is I am going to, greetings, Nura Allah. So what I've said is I'm going to make this a 7-part series, 1 hour each series, which is a lot. 1 hour each series, discussing each of the 5 elements, their organs and so on, their characteristics, and some do's and don'ts and things to look out for in presentation for each element. Okay, so today, like I said at the introduction, we're going to be discussing the wood element. It is timely that we're discussing the wood element, considering that for the first time in 60 years, we are in a wood dragon year. The Chinese New Year is the wood dragon. And we are on the precipice of entering into the wood season. The wood season is spring, which means on the equinox, we will have officially transitioned from the water element to the wood element. Okay. All right. So everybody following? Everybody good? Thumbs up, raised hands, any questions? Actually, I will ask you to hold your questions until the end so I can move through this quick. But I will leave like maybe the last 10 minutes open for questions that people may have at the end. So if everybody's following, I'm going to keep going. All right, so let's talk about the wood element. As demonstrated here, the wood element, the organs of the wood element are the liver and the gallbladder. These are the elements of wood. Okay, I mean, these are the organs of the wood element. I'm just going to put this down because I think y'all are good on that. So there are some things that you should know about the wood element, about all the elements, as a matter of fact. So let me pull out a little book real quick. Actually, maybe better. Actually, let me grab another book. I actually have a better book for this. Oh, here we go. All right. All right. Let's see here. So, mark that. Yep. Okay. That's. Yep. That is. Yeah. Okay. So there's some things that you all need to know that I think are important. Yes, absolutely important for this discussion. Okay. So obviously, so obviously the color, Chad, I just love this shit so much. Hold on, let me. I'll do that. Yup. And I think that is all I'm going to put on y'all. It's a lot. Okay. Cool. Okay. So obviously, the first thing that stands out is the color. The color of the wood element is green. Okay. The color of the wood element is green. It's green because the season of the wood element is spring. The element that comes before spring is the water element, which is represented by the winter. We're transitioning out of winter, right? Which is the time where everything is dead and constricted and it's dark and it's closed and our movements are small, right? So we're transitioning out of the season of metaphorical death into the season of birth and renewal. This is spring. It is represented by the color green. It's called the wood element. It's talking about the tree. Okay. Now, so there are a couple things you need to know. Even though it's called the wood element, the wood that this element is talking about is a whole tree. The roots, the trunk, and the leaves, the flowering. Okay. That's important because the liver, and you know what else? What else happens? What else happens in the spring? Think about the spring. What else happens in the spring? What other thing is prevalent? What kind of other, when you think about spring, what do you think about? Anybody? I ain't gonna wait too long because I'm trying to be real tight with the time. Anybody? Nothing? Okay. Rain. Yes, blossoming flowers. Rain and wind. Rain and wind. I guess I should have clarified external factors that you would think about in terms of spring. Rain and wind. These external factors. It's interesting, Balance, that you say insects because it's an aspect. Deeper later on, but damn, how insightful of you. How insightful. I love it. Okay. But rain and wind. There are certain sayings in different cultures about how the only way the trunk of a tree gets strong is to resist the wind. And if a tree is in a place where there's no wind, the tree can't get strong, right? Wind and rain are major external factors in the spring. They're major factors in disease presentation of the liver. I'll get to that later, but you should know that. You should make a mental note about that. Okay. So let's talk about, I'm just going to talk about in the order that I have them written down. So each organ, okay, so in Chinese medicine, you have 12 primary meridians. 12 primary meridians. The reason you have 12 primary meridians is because, like I said, here you actually have 4 organs represented. You have your 2 internal organs and your 2 external organs. So instead of it being 5, you still have only 5 elements, but you have 12 organs. Each organ has its own channel. There's a pericardium channel, Sanjiao channel, heart channel, SI channel, liver gallbladder channel, your kidney channel, urinary bladder channel, lung channel, large intestine channel, spleen channel, stomach channel. So the reason you have 12 channels is because you have 2 sets there. Okay? These channels, so you have the 12 channels, right? This is how you treat. So you use ideally the identifying factors of the 5 elements to determine how you're going to like self-treat, right? That's how I use it. I use 5 elements to come up with a diagnosis, and then I'll use traditional Chinese medicine to formulate a point prescription. Just like your doctor analyzes you, says this what's wrong, gives you a prescription for what he thinks is wrong with you. I do the same thing. I look at you, I look at your symptoms, I say this is what's wrong with you, but instead I write a point, an acupuncture point prescription. Okay. All right. For you who are watching this, you can begin to self-analyze based on these characteristics that I'm talking to you about. So right now it might not seem like making a lot of sense, but when I talk to you about wind, when I talk to you about rain, rain produces damp. You feel me? When I talk to you about the color, I'm about to talk to you about the spirit and some other defining characters that will help create an image that now you can start to relate to when we start talking about symptoms, how they present based on organ dysfunction. Okay. So let's talk first about the spirit. This each organ is like its own little person. Okay. And that shouldn't be hard to believe. Each cell in our body, we know, functions as its own little entity. It's got its own little like energy manufacturing company up in there, the way it eats, the way it's born, the way its cell dies, all that stuff, right? So each cell, so each organ is like its own little person. That being said, each organ, each element, I'll say element. No, I'll say organ. Each organ has its own spirit. Okay? Now, let's go through them quickly. The spirit, we won't go through all of them. We'll only talk about the one we're talking about today. So the spirit of the wood element or the liver, right, is called the Hun. Hun. It's called the Hun. The spirit of the liver, called the Hun, put in parentheses next to it, is known as the ethereal soul. The ethereal soul. This is likened to the Western notion of the spirit. Okay, in Western ideology or philosophy, this is like what we would call our spirit, right? The ethereal soul or the Hun. When the Hun is in balance, listen to this. This is what's important. When the Hun is in balance, you have clear vision and goals. You know how to bring those goals into being. You excel at planning and decision making. Yes, you excel at planning and decision making. When it is out of balance, it displays wrath. It displays wrath. The liver or the spirit of the liver benefits from exercise and reading. It benefits from exercise and reading. I'll talk about that a little bit more when we go into the emotions. Actually, I can probably go ahead and talk to you about that now. Yeah, let's do that. Okay. So along with the spirit, right? Each organ has its own spirit. Along with the spirit, each organ has its own negative and positive emotions. Okay? Negative and positive emotions. The negative emotions, and so let me just clarify something. In this system of medicine, there is a philosophy, okay, that basically states that there are only two causes of all chronic disease. All chronic disease, meaning it's not an exogenic like pathogen. It's not something invading from the outside in. Those chronic diseases that are like lifestyle conditions. You know what I'm saying? There are only two causes for every single one chronic diseases. You can take it or leave it. I'm just telling you what it is. You feel me? And the Chinese aren't the only ones that say that, by the way. The leading cause of all chronic disease, the least addressed, right? The leading cause of all chronic disease is number one, unresolved and unexpressed emotional trauma and strain. That's number one. Unresolved and unexpressed emotional trauma and strain is the leading cause of all chronic disease. Second to that is improper food and drink over long periods of time. Improper food and drink. That's it. The reason that's important to say is because 5 elements, more than any other system of Chinese medicine, really digs deep into that aspect. Unresolved, unexpressed emotional trauma and strain. It really gets deep in it, right? And so you need to know how an organ in distress presents itself through you, okay? So the organs that, and so also when you're talking about emotions and organs, it's kind of like which came first, the chicken or the egg, because unexpressed emotional trauma and strain over time can injure the physical organ. Or if the organ is in distress, something happens, you get sick, like you get a bug or whatever, something acute happens, then that injured or organ in distress can produce behavior that is out of character for that person. Okay? So alcohol is a great example since we're talking about the liver. Alcohol, so say you have a homeboy or homegirl that's not a regular drinker, and when they drink, they don't drink much. And one night you take them out and you convince them to go in and y'all turn up, and this nice, chill, cool homeboy or homegirl of yours all of a sudden is being like violently belligerent. You know what I'm saying? They're like wanting to fight everybody. What are you looking at? This is a classic example of a liver acutely in distress producing the emotion of rage. Okay? Because the emotions that can injure the liver or that the liver hold or are processed by the liver are, ready? Rage, anger, frustration, resentment, jealousy, envy, depression, and stress. Y'all need me to repeat those? I'm saying y'all need me to repeat those. Rage, anger, resentment, frustration, envy, jealousy, stress, and depression. Okay? Those are the emotions that specifically impact the liver. Okay? And it's interesting. I'm going to see if I can pull this little article up. I think I can still see you guys when I do that. But the interesting thing is when I was doing the astrology for the, I was like partnering the astrology for the Chinese New Year wood dragon with Chinese medicine or with 5 elements theory. One of the primary things that this wood dragon energy warns against is the propensity to anger easily. So it warns about, not harnessing, dealing with your anger, that so the energy of the dragon is a very beneficent energy. It is a very loving, it is a very like humanitarian energy. Its other side, however, is it, because it's so big-hearted, because it's so beneficent, because it's so interested in like harmony and humanity, it can be quick to anger. Now, I'm going to switch to Western brain for a second. Now, this may sound crazy to you all, but Western medicine has finally acknowledged the link between anger and what they call cardiovascular disease, but essentially it's not cardiovascular disease that's causing these events. It's actually, it is people who, what they call type A personalities. People who have type A personalities fly off the handle easily, get mad easily, cussing people out, road ragers, you know what I'm saying? Like they go from 0 to 60 in a half a second, you feel me? Like they ready to pop off any minute. People who are like have type A personalities, now this is Western medicine, are almost I think it's 7 times more likely to die of coronary events. That is stroke, aneurysm, heart attack. The reason why, however, and the Chinese knew this, right? Because Western medicine will just call it a coronary event. In Western medicine, they say that reason that people who are type A personalities have an increased risk of coronary events is because they have elevated levels of homocysteine and cortisol. And homocysteine and cortisol are produced in the liver. So they're still saying what the Chinese have been saying for, this is what, about 4,000 years old, this idea, 5 elements theory, that the liver, is where anger, rage, resentment, frustration, all those things cause serious issues in the liver. I'll talk about the symptoms of those in a minute. But, fast forward, now Western medicine concedes that it's elevated cortisol levels and elevated homocysteine levels that cause an increase in coronary events, stroke, aneurysm, and heart attack, and people who fly off the deep end. Like, as a matter of fact, bodybuilders were people that they identified as having like really aggressive type A personalities. You think about the bodybuilders in the gym, the body still interprets that as anger or rage. So that's that. Now, there was a point I was going to make. Okay. So back to Eastern medicine. I'm going to go back and forth between the two with the liver, because the liver has a very, they all have important jobs, but the liver has a very peculiarly important job. The liver is always scouting the blood for things that exist in the blood that do not belong. It is our biggest internal detox organ. Okay. And so the liver is always in Western medicine. In Western medicine, you have in the liver what they call phase 1 and phase 2 detox pathway. So all the blood in your body is constantly being filtered through phase 1, phase 2 detox pathways to make sure that there is nothing poisonous or toxic in the blood that could kill you. Then if there's something in there that you don't need, then there are enzymes in the liver that will act like little Pac-Men and wrap around said little suspect dude and bind it up to either be to be passed out through the feces, or if the body cannot recognize, i.e. trans fat, i.e. Artificial sweeteners, i.e. those things that aren't produced naturally in nature. If the body cannot recognize something that is inside, that is taken in, then the liver will do the same thing. It will bind it, but instead of passing it through the feces in a natural process, it'll be like, look, we don't know what to do with this shit right here, so we just gonna tuck this away in these deposits of fat that you have everywhere. And so in your fat adipose is where those things that the liver cannot recognize as cannot recognize as natural, it'll get tucked away in the fat adipose, right? Anyway, so in Chinese medicine, this thing that I just described from the Western perspective as phase 1, phase 2 detox pathways, in Chinese medicine, they just called it the smooth flow of qi, or the smooth flow of qi and blood, the smooth flow of qi and blood. So when you have either internal or external factors that slow the smooth flow of qi and blood in the liver, you have what is called liver constraint. Liver constraint. So imagine an engine that you just got an oil change. You feel me? And when you got that oil change, everything is smooth. Your car sounds better. It sounds happy because the oil is nice. It's new. It's flowing through the engine freely. Everything's moving harmoniously. But you slack. You lazy about getting your oil changed regularly. Next thing you know, your engine is making funny noises. It's the pull out. It sounds like your engine is working harder to do what it's supposed to do. You look under the hood, you check your oil. Your oil is black and it's gunky. It's thick. It's not thin and smooth like it was before. It's thick and it's gunky and it's black. This in your liver, especially under constraint, is the blood. This is the blood. And so when the blood cannot move through phase 1 and phase 2 detox pathway freely, and so what happens when that oil is gunky and thick in your car and is having to work really hard to do what it does? Your engine heats up. What do they tell you run the risk of if you don't get regular oil change? Blowing out the engine, right? Because the heat is creating more heat because the parts are having to work harder to do what it's supposed to be able to do easily with fresh, clear, ungunked oil. That's your liver in a nutshell. So when you have constraint over time, if you do not treat the constraint through dietary methods over time, that constraint can cause other issues. The way the constraint shows up in symptoms may be red eyes, because the external sense organ, each element has an external sense organ. The external sense organ of the liver is the eyes. The internal sense organ of the liver are the joints, the sinews, the cartilage, all your connective tissue. The liver governs and controls your connective tissue. It opens into the eyes. So that's Western science, right? You know something's wrong with somebody if they have bloodshot eyes. You know something's wrong with their liver if they have bloodshot eyes. You know a person is jaundiced. You don't even have to be a doctor. You know a person is jaundiced if they have yellowing of their eyes, right? The liver opens to the eyes, okay? That's its external sense organ. Now, so we talked about the ethereal soul. We said what? That a liver in balance, the ethereal soul, the hunt, the spirit of the liver in balance, gives you clear vision and goals, knows how to bring them into being. You excel at planning and decision making, right? And the reason that it says that the hun, or the spirit of the liver, benefits from exercise is why. When you exercise, it's like you're massaging the liver. You're actually softening up that constraint. Constraint means what? It's kind of rigid, it's tight, it's constrained, right? You move, even if you're just doing something like exercise, just walking. Walking is a great exercise for the liver and the spleen. When you think about it, you're moving your arms up and down. Every time you move your arms up and down while you're walking, you are massaging the liver over here on the right, the spleen over here on the left. You're literally massaging the spleen and the liver when you are walking with your hands raised. Okay. And then the reading is to keep blood in the smallest capillaries of the eyes, right? Okay, so let's move it along. This is still going slower than I wanted it to, but we're going to move it right along. Now, each organ is a part of what is called the Emperor's Court. The Emperor's Court, this is important to know because, again, it gives us analogies that can make this stuff make sense. The Emperor is the fire. The fire element is known as the Emperor. The fire element is known as the Emperor. Specifically, the heart is the Emperor. And all these other people here are officials in the Emperor's court. The officials of the Emperor's court. That's what they're known as. And each official's role will tell you what they do in your body. So for the liver's role or job in the Emperor's court is as the general. The liver is the general. Wait. The liver is the general. What does a general do in an army, in the military? What does the general do? What's the general's job in the military? Somebody. I ain't asking you a trick question. What is the general's job in the military? Nobody? Nobody? The general's job is to set the strategy. So the general, remember what the Hun was? He has a clear vision. He has a clear understanding of what it is they're up against. He has a clear vision, the general. So he can create a strategy based on what he sees and his training, based on what he sees. He can create a battle strategy that will allow them to be victorious. That's what the general does. So the general, as the liver, giving us clear vision, right? And having the innate know-how to make the vision become reality through adequate planning and decision-making, excellent planning and decision-making. This is what the general does, right? What does this mean in the grand scheme of things in terms of your liver? The liver, as the general, what did I say? Is constantly filtering all the blood in the body, analyzing the blood all the time to send information to other areas saying, okay, we're deficient over here. We're in excess over here. We need a little bit more of this over here. We need a little less of that over there. Because the liver has a grand view of what's happening in the overall relationship of these organs, right? And so based on that, the liver can say, this is how the whole crew needs to move forward. The other thing that the liver does, and this is more philosophical, but I think it's incredible. The liver, or the general, right? The general or the spirit, the Hun of the liver, because the liver is still what? Represented by, the liver is still represented. Damn. I got no paper I can write. Okay. The liver is still The liver is still the whole healthy tree. Okay. This is the liver. This is the liver. Okay. And so the reason that it's important for you to know that the wood element is the whole tree, the roots and everything, is because the clear vision that the liver gives. How does the liver give clear vision? As the general, as the Hun. The liver opens into the eyes, right? But not just these eyes, your internal eye, that dream that you have when you're a child, right? Before people start imposing their fears on you and their shoulds and shouldn'ts and do's and don'ts, and you ask a little 5-year-old, what do you want to be when you grow up? And that baby, based on his healthy liver's internal vision, I want to be an astronaut. I want to be the president of the United States. They have big, big dreams, big ambitions that they at the time can see through a healthy liver in their mind's eye. They can see that. That is the branches, the leaves, big, healthy, beautiful green foliage. That baby says, I want to be all the things. I want to be an astronaut. I want to be a millionaire, whatever. Okay. This is deep. This is so deep because the liver is fed by its mother. The liver's mother is the water element, the kidneys. Now we'll have to come back to that so I can tell you this relationship, because the kidneys or the water element nourishes the tree, nourishes the general. And if the general is well nourished, he can see clear, just as clearly in his mind's eye, how he can execute this big, giant, beautiful vision. Okay? He can see the day-to-day things that he has to do. He can understand the strategy that he has to work in order for this big, beautiful foliage to be made real from a little bitty seed or whatever. Okay? It gets a little deeper than that when you start talking about the tree element with its other partner elements. So I'll start bringing out that little magical shit as we go along. But that is important to know. Okay? Because the foliage is a representation of arrival. When you have a big, beautiful, healthy tree, this is like from the seed, seeing the thing in your mind's eye, to its execution. And the general is responsible for that. Okay? And then I think this might be, I might go for 10 more minutes, then stop and open up the thing if for anybody who may have questions. So I'll put the little link in the StreamYard. Obviously, with those of you who are tuning in from IG, you would just have to ask your question as a message. But for those of you who are joining through the StreamYard, that's YouTube, Facebook, and Twitch, you can either type your question, or if you want to be brought on to ask your question on the screen, then you can just copy. As a matter of fact, I'll do that right now. You can just copy the link or click on the link in the comments, and it'll walk you through how to be brought on to ask questions. So I'm gonna go for about 10 more minutes, and then you guys can ask some questions. So the other things that you should know about the liver, these are more kind of like basic things. So you know that the color of the liver is green. The taste of the liver is sour. It's sour. The taste of the liver is sour. So that would be like if I'm asking you in an intake, without thinking about it, what do you crave? Sweet, salty, sour, spicy. Whatever comes first can tell me something about that organ. It can help to confirm or reject something that I might be leaning to in terms of organ presentation, along with other symptoms, right? So sweet, sour, salty, spicy, and bitter are your tastes for these elements. The taste for the wood element is sour. It's sour. Okay. Let's see what else. The taste is sour. The other thing that is important about the liver, extremely important about the liver, it's not a part of 5 elements, but you should still know it. The liver controls female menstruation. The liver controls menstruation. The liver controls menstruation. So you can do an intake or investigation of yourself and determine what is going on with your liver by how you bleed, the color of the blood, the duration of your bleed. Are you only bleeding 2 days every period, or are you bleeding 7 or 8 days a period, right? The volume of blood. Are you just spotting and calling that a period? Are you bleeding a lot during your menstruation? All of these variants. Does your blood change color through your cycle? Does it start out pink and go to bright red, and then go to dark red like wine, and then turn brown at the end? All of these things can tell you about something that is happening in the liver, because the menstruation, at least from the perspective of Chinese medicine, governs menstrual blood. The liver blood governs menstrual blood, right? So one of the things that's really interesting, and I'm sure some of you have heard variations of this, but it's always been kind of esoteric when we talk about life force or essence. You've heard people talk about, I'm talking about like when people talk about like tantric sex and like sex magic or whatever the fuck people are into these days, when they're talking about tantra and tantra sex and all that stuff, and they talk about a man's essence being housed in his semen, right? This is true, at least from the perspective of Chinese medicine, that a man's essence is housed in his semen, which is why symptomatically, when a man ejaculates, typically he's done. He's down. It is a lot of power. It is a lot of energy that goes with or comes with ejaculation for males. Okay. So, and all of like the Kama Sutra and all of these different ideas about sex and semen retention, it was about extending the life of males, because our reproductive system is governed by the kidneys. Our reproductive system is governed by the kidneys, male and female, is governed by the kidneys. And so if a man is ejaculating often and his essence, or what we call his Jing, is housed in his semen, he is heavily taxing his kidney essence, his kidney chi, right? However, for women, our essence is housed in our menstrual blood. Our essence, our Jing, is housed in our menstrual blood. And it's really unfortunate, because I don't want to get that deep into it, but put a bookmark on that. We'll talk about it when we talk about the kidneys. But the liver's role in this process. So the kidneys are about the reproductive process, period. The kidneys are about the reproductive process, period. The liver its role is to govern menstruation. Okay. And so that's important, because emotional constraint or emotional excesses can change or irritate your menstrual process. We know this now. We call it premenstrual syndrome. You're moody, your body hurts, there's a ton of bloating, your boobies hurt, your ribs hurt, your low back hurt, you got an attitude, you got weird ass cravings during your menstrual cycle, right? You may be really tired at the beginning of your cycle, your bowel habits change during your cycle. All of that is because of emotional excess in the liver during your cycle. Okay, that's a discussion for another day, but you should just know that. You should just know that. So if you are, some women become anemic only during their bleed. If you're bleeding heavily, then this is something that we'll probably, I don't know, maybe save for part 2 on this discussion, because the liver plays such an impactful role in that particular aspect of women's lives. Okay. But for today, we're going to, just focus on, okay, so the taste is sour. The smell is rotten. The sound when the liver is constrained, the sound that we make, because our body is always trying to what? Self-harmonize, self-regulate. So when you hear somebody sighing a lot, and we think they got an attitude, or they're bored with us, or they don't want to hear us talking, sometimes it may just, I'd venture to say most times, it may just be that they have constrained liver. You think about a kid sitting in a classroom for an hour, and then going to another classroom for an hour, and then going to another classroom for an hour, and then having a 30-minute lunch break, and then they've been sitting a very long time. What happens when we sit? We're bent over, we're writing, you feel me? We're crunching in on that liver. The liver is constrained just from our posture, or for sitting for long periods of time without moving. Remember, the liver is made happy by walking, right? Exercising. And so when you start hearing people sighing, especially after sitting for long periods of time, they're like, they ain't thinking about it. They just sighing. But what have we done culturally? We've said, oh, you got an attitude. Oh, am I boring you, Mr. Johnson? Do you want to come up here and write on the board? Shaming people, you feel me? Because they're sighing, when it actually is the liver's natural attempt to move stuck and stagnant chi and blood. So sighing is the noise that liver makes. Shouting becomes the noise when the liver is experiencing too much fire. Okay. Oh, that hurt. What else? I think that's, the last thing. Okay. So that's that. That's it. That's that on the characteristics, on the little details of the liver. Now, I want to talk to you very briefly about the fact that we are about to enter into the liver season during a wood element dragon astrological year, which is the first one in 60 years. So okay, so I want to go back. Somebody said, who was it? It was Balance. So Balance said insect. And you remember, I was like, oh my God, how insightful that is of you. This is why. So the liver is a tree. And what can happen to trees sometimes? Trees can become infected, if you will, with termites. And the tree on the outside might be beautiful and vibrant and look sturdy. And then you cut the tree down and it might be completely hollowed out with insects, right? This concept of insects in the ditch, right? Or they call it an insect ditch, right? In the tree element or the wood element, the description that they use. So there is a point that is used to, quote, clear the insects from the ditch. The way that they describe the person that personifies the need for this point is this. This is a quote that one of my professors gave me. This is my little book that I wrote all my notes in student clinic when I was in school. And he told us this exact quote to describe the person who may look perfectly fine on the outside, but has all of these little insects in the ditch within, right? This point, liver 5, the insect ditch, works well for a body that is habitually reactive to things that are not toxic, but that person thinks that they are. This person gets hung up on the annoying details of life, right? This person, so this is the person that we might consider a hypochondriac, right? They're constantly worried that something is wrong that's not. You know, they read something on the internet and they're like, oh my God, I have that person. This is the person who also gets hung up on the annoying, like insignificant details of life, but they are like genuinely frustrated by those things. The example that so he says, this point, liver 5, is used to clear out insects from the inner core to build the strength of the wood element. This person is the person who, for example, because this is a direct quote from my professor, this is the person who would be at an orgy, but not having a good time at the orgy because he hates the cheese dip. I thought it was awesome. I thought it was a great description. This is the person who is at an orgy and cannot have a good time because he hates the cheese dip. He is like hyper focused on this crappy cheese dip while everybody is fully embodied in, orgasmic ecstasy or whatever. That is the quintessential insect ditch person. We know that person. I know at least one person that perfectly describes this, right? So this is the energy of one of the liver points, one of the points that is used, to treat different aspect or personifications of emotional or spiritual disharmonious liver attributes. Okay. There's another one that's really dope. This point, liver 13, is for those constrained in process to the point that they can't move on. What did I say? Constraint is one of the biggest issues of liver. The free flow, the unobstructed flow of blood and qi becomes constrained primarily by unresolved emotional trauma and strain, right? When the liver becomes constrained, that says this is a particular kind of constraint that is that demonstrates itself as a person who gets so constrained they can't move forward, they can't move on, they're like stuck, right? It says this point can be used to free up a person who may be experiencing existential writer's block. Isn't that amazing? Isn't that amazing? Liver 14, for a person who no longer has the ability to see the future clearly for themselves. This is their aim, like their ambitions, their dreams, the things that they always wanted to do. For that person who cannot see, who can no longer see clearly their future, this point, which is called the gate of hope, liver 14 is the gate of hope, can actually restore their vision of the future. The height of the branches expanding to heaven. Remember the trees that go up into the sky, right? Liver 14 is an inspiring point, and the partner that you could use with it for this person is lung 1. So liver 14 is aspiring, and lung 1 is inspiring. It restores hope and faith, right? If this gate, they call this the gate of hope, liver 14. If this gate is closed, you will not want to make plans for the future. This is going to be impactful when we start talking about, again, the kidney's relationship to the liver, because the kidneys provide in its nourishing, because the kidneys are the mother to the liver. The water element mothers the liver element, the wood element. If the kidney is injured, if the water element is injured by chronic shock and fear, it does not have enough of its own element to nurture the liver element. And so when you talk about if the gate is closed, you will not want to make any plans for the future. You're talking about this disharmonious relationship between the mother and the son, the kidneys and the liver. The mother is the kidneys in this scenario. The liver is the son. She does not have enough energy to nurture her child. Therefore, the baby, the liver, doesn't have the ability to dream, doesn't have the ability to see the future, to make plans for the future. Yes, it is deep balance. It's beautiful. Yeah. So those were some points that he, my professor brought out that really speak to like the energetic, philosophical, spiritual, and emotional energy of the liver and how to resolve it. Okay. So with that being said, foods that are important for the liver. This is one of the places where the color of the element becomes important. The color of the element becomes important, okay? Because you can always start with eating foods that are the color of the element. So you hear that all the time. If you have, certain issues, they'll tell you, oh, well, you just need to juice or eat some dark leafy greens, such and such. So in the liver channel, you don't have to know this, but it's important to give you an idea about food and its impact on the element. The liver channel starts on, so say this is my foot, this is my big toe, okay? The liver channel starts at the big toe and goes down between the big toe and the long toe and travels up the interior part of your leg. So say where my leg and my shoulder meet, this is where my leg meets my vagina, okay? The inguinal triangle, okay? So the liver channel goes up, and say this angle here is my vagina, okay? The liver channel actually circles around the sexual organs, males and females. It circles around the sexual organs, then comes up the side. So now we're looking at the trunk. It comes up the side of the body, and comes up into the chest. Okay. The reason that comes up the side of the body, into the chest, and it circles around the nipple. Okay. Circles around the nipple and ends like right around here in the chest. Okay. So it circles around the gonads, and it comes up the side of the body and circles around the nipples. This is important because in Western medicine, any of you midwives or doulas, what do you tell a woman who wants to dry up her breast milk? You put cabbage in the bra to dry up your breast milk. What about a woman who is not lactating enough or producing enough milk? You're giving her certain herbs that are in fact dark leafy greens, dandelion, burdock. There's several other herbs that you can do that are, what do they call them? Galactagogues, I think there were, but they basically stimulate the production of milk, of breast milk, right? Dark leafy greens. The reason that works is because the liver channel circles around the entire breast, circling around the nipples. The liver is what stimulates or dries up the production of breast milk. In Chinese medicine, the liver, along with potentially one other organ, is most indicated in all forms of breast cancer. Some type of liver, long-standing, long-going, it circles around the throat too, the liver. But breast cancer, liver is always implicated. Liver is always implicated. Always, 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 always. Always. Yep. So that's important. And the reason why is because what did I tell you at the top of this? every single solitary chronic disease that has ever existed or will ever be created by the parasitic medical industry has two origins. The biggest and most unaddressed is unresolved, unexpressed emotional trauma and strain. Second to that is improper food and drink, right? The liver is the organ that is most immediately and heavily impacted because I listed off 8 emotions that are constantly giving the liver a hard time. Partner that with the fact that the liver is our largest and most important detox organ, and it is having to attempt to detox our bodies from substances that have never existed in the 4.5 billion years of this planet existing, right? So it's toxic burden from external factors, plus its toxic burden from a multiplicity of unresolved emotional strain and trauma, right? The liver is constantly taking a hit. If you partner that with a sedentary lifestyle, then you can see how we've had an increase in what we call cardiovascular disease, coronary events, or have their origins more in the liver than in the heart. Because anyway, I won't go that far yet, but I'll tell you why, because later. All right, so that's the start. Dark leafy greens. Okay, beets, you've always heard, you've always known beets are great for the liver, right? But not just the beets themselves, also the beet greens, unless you have gout. If you have gout, do not eat beet greens. You can eat the beets, can't eat the greens. But everybody else, you can eat the beets and the beet greens. FYI, if you have never eaten raw beets, they are delicious. They are delicious. They taste just like carrots. So I dice my little beets up just like little strips of carrots, put them on my salad. We'll toss them in my spaghetti sauce, whatever. But beets and beet greens, any dark leafy greens. So let me tell you something about dark leafy greens. Every time I ask one of my clients about do they eat dark leafy greens, the first thing they say is I eat spinach every day. That's not what the fuck I'm talking about. Not even close. Each one of your dark leafy greens has different nutritional components that you need. You either multiply your greens or alternate your greens. If spinach is your jam and you have to have it every day, throw some other stuff in there with it. Try bok choy. Try, try like, what's the really pretty one? Chard, like the red chard. Try chard. Cut it up good. If you eat a salad with dark leafy greens, add more than one green. If you like kale and you eat kale every day, still alternate your greens. If kale is your staple, add other greens to it. And the 2 other disclaimers about adding dark leafy greens is to always consume those greens with some type of vinegar, apple cider vinegar, balsamic vinegar, red wine vinegar, and an adequate portion of some type of oil. I alternate my oils. Each one of the oils has active nutritional constituents that you need. I will, I have all the oils. I have sesame oil, both raw and toasted in my kitchen right now. I have walnut oil. I have almond oil, of avocado oil. I have ghee, and I have sesame, and olive oil, right? So I alternate those oils throughout the day. If I am eating a salad, I am putting some, like a tablespoon or 2, even if I have my favorite salad dressing on there. I am putting a tablespoon or 2 of my favorite oil, and I am putting some type of vinegar in that salad. It helps to make sure that you are extracting all of the nutrients from the greens. If you're eating fat-free salad dressing, you're not getting the benefit of the fat-soluble nutrients that are in the greens. You're only getting the benefit of the water-soluble nutrients if you're eating a fat-free salad. Okay? So you need fat. Fat is not your enemy, and especially if you are a female, if you're a biological female, you need fat. You need more fat than your male counterparts need. That's how our hormones are produced. That's what keeps us sane, is fat. Okay, so you want your healthy fats, and you want to make sure that they're on any type of vegetable that you're eating. You want to make sure that fat is present and that vinegar is also present. Okay, that's the big takeaway from that. Now, in terms of a detox, you can go hard or you can go easy. Now, the easiest thing that you can do as a liver detox in preparation for this seasonal change is a liver gallbladder cleanse. I think I talked to you guys about it last week. I am not going to describe it here. I will say, email me at releaseheartcenter@gmail.com and I will email you the protocol. Okay. I know I owe it to you, Solterra Wisdom. I ain't forgot about you. If you want to because the liver gallbladder cleanse, you can literally do in, I recommend 48 hours. The detox itself is only 1 day, but you need the next day to recover. Even though it's 1 day, it's intense. It's not painful, but it is intense energetically, and you'll be really sleepy. You'll be really tired the next day. So I always recommend that people do the detox on 1 day, and then the next day they take the day to rest so that they can recover their energy. So if you're interested in just doing and it's a deep, thorough cleanse, I will tell you, you do the liver gallbladder cleanse, you will be good. You can do that, and that's your whole detox for the month. Or you can go hard. You feel me? So in going hard, you want to really radically up your intake of apples and grapefruit. Apples and grapefruit help to free up the pectin in both the apples and the grapefruit, and then the enzymes that are peculiar to each of them help to open up any slow, sluggish stagnation in the phase 1, phase 2 detox pathways of the liver. So up your intake of apples and grapefruit during this session. You can also introduce, I don't really recommend it because it's like high in sugar, and sugar, the way that carbohydrates, sugar, complex and simple carbohydrates become fat in our body is through the liver. The liver transforms through a process that we don't have to go through, but that process of the transforming the unused carbohydrates, if we are not using enough energy to burn those carbohydrates as fuel, that energy potential is stored as fat through a process that takes place in the liver. So even though some people will recommend that you drink a lot of unfiltered organic apple juice in a liver detox, I don't really recommend it because of the sugar content. It's a lot of sugar. So I would just say stick with the apples, stick with organic apples and grapefruit, go hard on those. And then, so now my disclaimer about the apple juice is if you decide that you want to fast, even if it's just for 3 days, like the 3 days before the equinox, right? Or the 3 days around the equinox, because the equinox is on a Tuesday this year. So that Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, you want to detox through the transition. I mean, you want to fast through the transition of out of the winter season into the spring season. That's fine. And the apple juice would suffice. If you are actually fasting, if you're straight fasting, like straight juice fasting, then you can incorporate the organic unfiltered apple juice and it not have the same impact as if you were still consuming food and processing fat and carbohydrates and protein and so on. Okay. So if you want to do a short fast, 3 days around the equinox, that's a great idea. Incorporate apple juice and dark leafy greens. Those are going to be your hardcore staples for an adequate detox transitioning from one season to the next. Then also as a part of your detox is being outside barefoot, preferably in your element. What is the element? Trees. So bare feet on the grass, laying your back on the grass, looking up at the sun, looking up at the leaves, contemplating the leaves, focusing on the leaves, right? Moving your eyes around, like that stimulates the what's the word I'm looking for? That stimulates the moisture, the lubrication of the eyes, increasing clear vision, right? After hours of sitting at the screen or hours of looking on your phone, you are impacting your liver when you are spending extreme amounts of time on blue light digital gadgetry. Okay, so going outside, opening your eyes wide, deliberately moving your eyes around, right? Looking up at the leaves, looking down at the grass, taking deep breaths, opening the lungs so the lungs massage the liver and the spleen that are right there in front of it. That is a great, very impactful way to move and soothe liver chi. Okay. I think that's all I'm gonna say because it's 6:34 and I still got so much. I'm gonna tell you, I ain't gonna do it. I'm not gonna do the 7:30 thing. I really want to, but time has gotten away from me. I can't. And plus, I've just done a lot. My head is big right now. I need to go like dancing or some shit. But anyway, so I'm gonna reschedule the 7:30 that I had planned for tonight for sometime tomorrow. I don't know how. I still have this Harriet Tubman event to do, but I will do that tomorrow, maybe first thing in the morning. But I'm going to reschedule that. In the meantime, I have placed the link in the comment section. If you have questions, we will spend 10 minutes. So from now, for 10 minutes, we'll spend 10 minutes with Q&A. If you have any questions, any clarity that you need me to offer to this discussion, anything for those of you who came in late that I need to revisit. Do you need to see the 5 elements chart again? Do I need to hold it stiller so you can take a screenshot? Let me know. Those of you who are tuning in from IG, the only way that you are able to ask a question is in the comment section, but I will answer it if you have a question and you want to type it out. Those of you who are tuning in from Facebook, YouTube, or Twitch, you can copy and paste. You can, click on the link and it'll walk you through the process of me bringing you on the screen. If you want to be on the screen to ask your question, or you can just type it in the box if you have a question. Can you expound? I'll post your question. So Goddess Y asks, can you expound on what you mean by the smell rotten? And then Lemonin OC asks, is this available for rewatch? Yeah, on YouTube. Yeah, everything that I do live is automatically uploaded for you to be able to rewatch. So the smell of rotten. I have a perfect example. So with the liver's energy, so when we talk about, we'll talk about it a little bit more later, but each organ system, each element or each organ system has its natural flow of chi. It's the natural direction that chi flows through it. Okay. So if you're thinking about, for example, the spleen and stomach, the spleen, the energy of the spleen is down. The spleen and stomach is down because this is the digestive process. So you want that chi to be able to make sure that things are continually going down. All right. The chi direction of the liver, I believe is, I can't remember, but it's like expansive. It's not one directional because of the impact that the liver has on all of the other organs. But the thing that stands out about the liver is that the liver is defined by a liver in distress causes what we call rebellious chi. So any of the other organ systems whose chi is moving in the wrong direction, we know that even though that organ is implicated, the liver is implicated because it is responsible for all rebellious chi. What rebellious chi means is just like what rebel means, going in the wrong direction or going in opposition. So for example, if the direction of the stomach is down, right? If the direction of the stomach and the digestive system is down and you have acid regurgitation if you have heartburn after every meal, if you have excessive belching after every meal, if you have nausea or vomiting after meals, then even though, yes, the stomach and spleen is indicated, the liver is overacting on the spleen and stomach, causing the chi to go in the wrong direction. So it is the liver that is causing the rebellious chi, causing excessive belching, GERD, acid regurgitation, heartburn, nausea, and vomiting. Okay. So, so the reason I mentioned that when you're talking about the smell of rotten is when you think about throw up, when you think about belching, that's the smell of rotten that it's talking about. Goddess why I hope that was helpful. But that's what when you're thinking about rotten, that's what you're thinking about. Rebellious chi causing vomiting or causing, like that little burpy acid regurgitation, and it's gross. It tastes rotten. It smells rotten in your head. That's what it's talking about. So let's see. Tajali Mushana. I hope I didn't butcher your name. Tajali Mushana. What happens to a woman's essence during menopause since she no longer bleeds? Okay, so in different cultures, there is this idea, many cultures, there is this idea. That's why, let me digress for a little bit. So back during the Inquisition, when all these women were being accused of being witches for anything, if they breathed wrong, they could be a witch, right? Everybody was a witch, right? Who were the most violently opposed? Who were the most violently oppressed during the Inquisition? It was old women, right? That's why our images of women who were supposedly witches is always some old, she got warts, you understand? She hunched over, she got white stringy hair. They always showed like the most terrible aspect of the witch was the witch that was in her crone years, right? That condemning of elder women was based on like pre-patriarchal adoration of crone women, because the belief in goddess worshiping societies all over the world was that once a woman's moon blood, once she stopped bleeding, once she entered or transitioned into her crone years, that the power and the magic of the moon blood was retained in her body. Right? So it made her much more powerful. That was the idea, that for her to not bleed anymore, she was retaining the power of her moon blood in her body, making her much more wise, making her much more powerful, and into the Inquisitional period, making her much more dangerous. So that's why all these horror stories about old ladies eating kids and bullshit like that was based on the disempowering of elder women that had received all this adoration and power in goddess worshiping societies. I'm telling you this as a preface to this question about women's essence during menopause is because in China, one of my professors was telling me that the idea of menopause in China is a relatively recent phenomenon, and that phenomena rising with the westernization of Chinese culture. The more and more Western corporations and businesses coming into China, changing certain cultural norms, like cultural dietary. These were cultural dietary norms. The Chinese didn't eat a lot of dairy. They didn't eat a bunch of eggs, like having grits, eggs, and bacon for breakfast. They didn't do that. They would take one egg and put it in a giant pot of rice, and that would be their serving of egg, because of the nature of how they view food and the impact that food has on these different organs. And so with these cultural changes, but Dr. Zhu was saying, we didn't even have a word for menopause in Chinese culture until like 50 years ago. Like how women in the West experience menopause, women in China didn't experience what we call menopause that way. The hot flashes, like there were some, but it wasn't like this culture where it was expected that you were going to suffer like hell as soon as you entered into your crone years, as soon as your ovaries went to sleep. Now in Western society, we understand now that menopause is not natural. Menopause is not normal. At least what we call menopause, the symptoms, the feels like you're cooking from the inside out, hot flashes all day, you sweating like you got poured a bucket on, night sweats, all this shit. That's not normal. That what happens when our ovaries go to sleep is, if we've lived a relatively healthy life, not just food wise, more emotionally, if we've lived a more emotionally healthy life, then our adrenals, the two little caps that sit on top of the kidneys, will kick in. After the ovaries go to sleep, the adrenals will take up the mission to produce just enough progesterone and estrogen to allow us to transition into those years with a relative amount of ease, not with all these terrible symptoms that women experience during menopause: vaginal dryness, a lowering of their sex drive, and irritability, and all of these other things, right? That if we have not beat the shit out of our adrenals our whole lives through constant stressors that are always calling the adrenals to come forth with the sword and shit, and there ain't no dragon and there ain't no tiger. We done beat the shit out of our adrenals over, a lifetime of jobs we hate, or fucking, microaggressions from the dominant, society, or whatever it is we deal with, that are causing these constant overstimulation of the adrenal glands. Then by the time our ovaries go to sleep, the adrenals, that's what they're calling it now, adrenal fatigue syndrome. The adrenals do not have enough energy to carry out the mission to help us peacefully and gracefully transition into our crone years. So this is what menopause is. It's essentially what we call menopausal symptoms. Menopausal symptoms essentially is the same thing as adrenal, or caused by adrenal fatigue syndrome. So ideally, that question, what happens to a woman's essence, is the same. She keeps her spiritual blood. She keeps her wisdom. She keeps the power inherent. And I'm not talking about esoterics. The essence that they're talking about in moon blood, the essence that is talked about throughout almost every culture on earth about the mysteries and magic of menstrual blood, is scientific. Now, they didn't understand. Let me not say that. I'm not saying they didn't understand the science. They had evidence too, but it's not until, I don't know, maybe the 90s that the Japanese started doing research on alternatives to fetuses, unborn aborted fetuses, was the primary research material around stem cell research, which was why it was so controversial from its inception, was because that was the test subject, the test matter used to understand the functionality of stem cells. And the Japanese started looking for alternative areas where stem cells could be harvested. And the two places that they looked was on the umbilical cords. They had women donate their umbilical cords to this research center, and also menstrual blood. Women were donating their menstrual blood for research. And so what we're calling essence, and why it's so important, especially in Western culture, and is even more especially among Black women and other women of color, who are told as young girls, oh, that's just your norm. That's just your norm for you to bleed 7 days and you're only 13. That's just your norm for you to have to wear, 5, 6, 7, 8 pads a day. That's just your norm. No, it's not. There is a healthy kind of, so what the Chinese say is a healthy menstrual cycle is 3 to 5 days, and you are losing 2 to 3 tablespoons of blood a day. And I've known too many people at 12, 13, 14, 18, 20 who have to wear tampons and pads overnight. You know what I'm saying? That's not normal. And because we don't understand, because nobody cares to understand, because we just women, they're just uteruses. You understand? because of this extraordinary demotion of the significance of the uterus, what it means for our whole health. It's not some, insignificant organ that's only important at the juncture that some divine semen get up in it and make a baby. It is impactful for our total health picture, right? And because we don't study that, we miss out on the ways that we could actually be a lot more vibrant, a lot more healthy, a lot more emotionally stable with just centering our whole health care on our uterus. And that's just my personal position. That's a discussion for another day, which I have done. Not on here though, but I've taught a workshop called The Mysteries and Magic of the Lower Palace. And it is about the uterus, the uterine vessel, so on and so forth. So that's a discussion for that. But the idea is that those stem cells, so now I'm saying stem cells instead of saying essence from the blood, talking like the science, the most prevalent stem cells, the place where the stem cells were the most prevalent of aborted fetuses, umbilical cords, and menstrual blood was in the menstrual blood. Now, when you want to talk about the fact that all three of those locations for this radical, just raw potential known as stem cells being able to heal all types of diseases because it's raw potential, it's untapped potential stem cells in all three of the places that you are able to get them in large quantities are the byproduct of people born with uteruses. Umbilical cords and menstruation being the highest two concentrations. Okay, so hopefully that addressed your question. So the presence of stem cells, right, in the menstrual blood now being retained in the body. That's my position. Okay, now y'all weren't as chatty as I thought y'all was gonna be. That's all y'all got is 2 questions. Nobody got no more questions. No. Okay, I'm about to close this joint out. All right, cool. Okay, well, that is that. I hope it was helpful. I know that was a lot of information, but that is basic information. Once we start talking from week to week about the other organs and we start to see the picture of how these organs communicate with one another, how they impact one another, how an excess in one can cause a deficiency in the other, right? And how the mother-son. So remember I was talking, this is the last thing I'm gonna say about it. Remember I was always talking about how this symbol here, when they talk about the harmony of the divine feminine and the sacred masculine, right? The harmony of the divine feminine and sacred masculine represented in this symbol is the harmony between the divine mother and the sacred son. It is the harmony between mother and son. So when you know that about yin-yang, and then you start digging deep into how, for example, to diagnose yourself using the yin-yang harmony of opposites demonstrated by this picture, right? And you see the controlling cycle and the birthing cycle or the mothering cycle. The diagnosis, the diagnoses language of 5 elements theory is the relationship between the grandmother, the mother, and the son. The grandmother, the mother, and the son. You understand? Which is brilliant. So, for example, that example that I gave you about acid regurgitation and how that's the stomach and the spleen, but it's because the liver overacting on the stomach and spleen is causing the chi of the stomach and spleen to be rebellious, heartburn, acid regurgitation, yada, 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 yada. Well, over time, if you're not treating this, all you're doing is treating the symptom. You're treating the rebellious chi by swallowing Tums or drinking Pepto-Bismol or, whatever, eating acids, making the shit worse. You're not addressing the overactivity of the wood element. You're eating Tums and Pepto-Bismol and all that shit. You're actually making the stomach and spleen weaker and weaker and weaker. Once the stomach and spleen becomes weak, really weak, this here, the stomach and the spleen, is a child to the fire element. So if the wood element is too hot, causing an over controlling behavior on the stomach and spleen, then as the mother to the heart, it's probably causing some other things. It's probably causing heart palpitations. It's probably causing bad dreams, dream disturbed sleep, because the heart controls the dreams, right? It's probably because we have a bad habit of eating late at night, 8, 9 o'clock at night. So that's when you're going to see that acid regurgitation, that heartburn, that kind of stuff. So it's going to make your sleep restless. The heart governs how we sleep. Do we sleep peacefully and deep or not? Right? So you've got the fire, the extra wood, the overheated engine of the liver, putting too much heat on the already burning heart, right? And overacting on the spleen and stomach, causing these symptoms: sleep disturbance, heart palpitations, maybe even shortness of breath if it goes on too long, right? And so without treating this, these will get worse because you just treating the symptoms. You taking some sleep aids to go to sleep because you can't go to sleep because you got this restless stomach and shit, right? In this scenario, the wood is the grandmother. The heart is the mother. And the spleen and stomach is the son. Why would the spleen and stomach be the son in this scenario? Oh my God, my arm. Why would the spleen and stomach be the son in this scenario? Because that's where the symptoms are showing up. The symptoms that you first started treating with Tums and Pepto-Bismol and all that shit, those are the symptoms that you're attempting to treat. Those are the ones that you could see: heartburn, nausea, vomiting, acid regurgitation. So you're treating those symptoms. That's the son, right? So that's the son, rebelling, right? The heart in this scenario is the mother to the son, to this rebellious son. And then the grandmother is the wood element. Now let me tell you, okay? So you think about this behavior, this rebellious behavior, right? This chi going in the wrong direction. Think about a baby, like a 3-year-old boy. You know how 3-year-old boys are. When you go to the grocery store, you feel me? They just wilding out. They see candy. They want the candy. They can't have the candy. They wilding around on the floor. They screaming. They like, damn, like, what's wrong with this mama? Why she don't reel this baby in? You feel me? Because he wilding. He wilding out of control. The mother is made deficient because of too much heat, right? The mother cannot calm the child because she doesn't have enough energy to calm the baby. Meanwhile, this depleted, exhausted, tired ass mama who don't even have enough energy to get her screaming baby off the floor is constantly being harassed. Wood constantly being thrown on this already exhausted mother, constantly being harassed by her mama about why you don't do this, why don't you whoop that baby behind? Like, he ain't got no business acting like that. So grandmama is in mama ear harassing the shit out of her. So she's tired because she's getting too much excess put on her by the mama. She's being depleted by this out of control baby, right? And so that's like a metaphorical understanding of this diagnosis of what's causing this rebellious chi symptom. Now, how do you treat it? Like what they call it? The treatment protocol for this disharmony among these three. The treatment protocol is actually this. This is not me like creating a metaphor. The treatment protocol for this scenario is to soothe and calm the grandmother, to tonify, strengthen, and nourish the mother, to subdue the son. That's the treatment protocol. Soothe and calm the grandmother. Strengthen and nourish the mother, to subdue and nurture the son. Y'all heard? Yes. And you can totally see that scenario. You feel me? You can, oh my God, my arm. You can totally see that scenario, right? So anyway, that's all I got for y'all tonight. I'm gonna call it a night. And I will see you guys tomorrow. I'm gonna reschedule the 7:30 for tomorrow morning sometime. So be looking out for your notifications. And hopefully this was helpful. I'll probably talk to you a little bit more. I didn't even see this question, Limon OC, but I am going to need to go. But tune in. Actually, email me, releaseheartcenter@gmail.com. releaseheartcenter@gmail.com. I will talk to you about this question that you have. What is happening to the liver when someone is going through addiction? That's a really great question. I do not have time to answer it, but I will answer it if you send me an email. Okay. And for those of you who may want to know that, that question or the answer to that question, we can talk about it tomorrow when I come on to talk to you about preparation for this new moon. All right. I'm gonna go. Love you all. My name is Cassandra Faye Floyd, also known as the Daughter of the Fates, founder of the Temple of Evolutionary Emergence. And I will see you guys tomorrow morning. All right. Peace.